So we've all heard the unfortunate, sad news of Akira Toriyama passing away, and everybody has done their own tribute to Akira Toriyama and his impact on manga, and not just manga and anime itself, but just everything, like video games as well. The guy had a huge impact on the world, and so I kind of wanted to do my own little tribute to him. And since I do manga spotlights and spotlights of series that most people don't really know of, and sometimes I like to do like retro reviews, like the first of something, like the very first issue of Ghost Rider or something like that. I decided, why don't we do a read through of the very first series that Toriyama ever published, that ever was officially published. And so, yeah, this is Wonder Island. It is not his first work, but it is the first work that was ever officially published. So he's done like other works before. I think he did one, it was like a Star Wars parody that he sent in for a contest. And the editors there like really enjoyed it, but it wasn't eligible to be a part of the contest because it was a parody of an already existing property rather than an original work. And so the editor still wanted to see more of Toriyama's stuff, but he's like, you got to do something original. Like, you can't use an ongoing existing IP. And so Toriyama came up with Wonder Island. And Wonder Island got published in Weekly Shonen Jump in 1978. And it became the very first work that he ever published. Unfortunately, it finished last place when it came to the reader survey. And he actually had planned on quitting being a mangaka, especially since Wonder Island 2 also ended up flopping. But rather than taking this as you're not good enough, he instead used this as motivation. He was like, I'm too stubborn to end my career as a failure. And so he kept just writing failure after failure after failure until eventually he hit across Dr. Slump, and that's what really boosted him into popularity until, of course, Dragon Ball came around. So yeah, this was his very first piece of work. It's also his very first failure. But I think this is also just kind of like a nice series to work on, because not only is it the first thing he's done, but because it failed, and because of the way he took that failure and turned it into a success later on, I think there's like a good story there, a good teaching there. So let's actually get into it. This is Wonder Island. And Wonder Island is about a World War II kamikaze pilot who ends up on this weird island, and he's trying to get back to Japan. And so we have our main character. His name is Furusu Hiso. I'm going to just call him Hiso. And Hiso is like this weird little goblin creature. I mean, he's a human, but he's tiny. Kind of has like this weird like beak for a mouth. And as I said before, he's stuck on this island, and he's been stuck on this island for a long time. And he's trying to get back home. And he wants to get back home by flying back. And so when we first see him, he's getting ready to jump off a cliff when his helmet falls off and lands to a bird nest. And he goes down to get his helmet back when Mama Bird shows up. And so he starts freaking out, and he decides, well, I have a beak, so I'm going to pretend I'm a bird too. And Mama Bird's like, I don't remember having 3 kids, but okay, whatever. So Mama Bird starts feeding her kids rats, dead rats. And of course, Hiso, it's his turn, and he eats the rat. Because at first, he's just kind of staring at it until Mama Bird gives him this look, like either you eat that thing or you're going to get eaten. So he eats it. And then, of course, he starts barfing like crazy afterwards. And then eventually, he gets hit on the head by this rock that's shot by this guy named P-Man. And P-Man has this sidekick who's like a fairy who kind of looks a little bit like Bulma, like in terms of hairstyle. And P-Man basically says, I'm sorry, dude. I thought you were a bird. That's why I shot you. And it turns out that he has a anti-air weapon. And Hiso was like, wow, like, how did you shoot a rock out of this thing? And it turns out that P-Man is not actually using the anti-air weapon as a gun, but instead is just using it as a stick in which he can tie a slingshot to. And he's slingshotting rocks at birds. So that's where like the humor kind of comes from. But eventually P-Man like shares his story about how he was a pilot. He was a kamikaze pilot. And while on his mission, his propeller fell off and he crash landed on this island. And he had to go through many misadventures trying to survive on this island. And we have this really funny line where he's like, I lived by myself on this island for 35 years in extremely harsh conditions until the age of 30. It's like, wait a minute. How do you live on an island for 35 years till you're 30 years old? That doesn't make any sense, especially since you were a grown man when you landed on this island. So, yeah, that got a chuckle out of me. But yeah, eventually he shows his wings that he has made out of wood, and he's telling like, P-Man, I'm going to use these wings to fly back to Japan. And everyone's just kind of like, oh, okay, that's cool, whatever. He's like, why aren't they surprised? Why aren't they shocked? Why aren't they in awe of the fact that I can fly with these wings? He's like, oh, it's because they probably have no idea how to fly. And it's like, well, one of them is a fairy who can fly. And then the other one, P-Man, he basically uses his muscular arms and he just flaps his hands and he starts flying too. So Hiso's like pissed off like that these people can fly so easily. So he takes a running start and jumps off a cliff and ends up just crashing to the floor. And eventually P-Man's like, well, I have someone who can help you fly. So he comes to this gorilla man, and the gorilla man basically gives him a wing glider. He's like, here you go. All you got to do is just run and jump and you'll be able to fly. And so he runs and he jumps and he starts flying, or I should say gliding. And as he's gliding, a vampire flies past him, lands on top of this dinosaur that's trying to read a Playboy version of dinosaurs called Play Monster, and basically takes some of his blood. And so the dinosaur gets pissed off and creates some smoke to get rid of the vampire. And Hiso gets caught up in the smoke, and it causes him to crash. And he ends up breaking his leg. And he's just upset. He's like, there's no way I can ever get back to my country. And the girl man's like, well, why don't you just take the boat? The boat can send you back. And he's like, no, I got to go by plane. I got to get there by flying. So then this little angel girl is like, well, why don't you just die? If you die, you can become an angel and then you can fly. And he's like, no, like I want to go to Japan. I don't want to go to heaven. And so P-Man's like, well, there's this witch. Maybe the witch can turn you into a bird. And he's like, wait, there's a witch that can turn me into a bird? That'll work. I'll do that. That's fine. And so the witch shows up, gives him this concoction, and says, if you drink this, he'll turn into a bird. And so he drinks it, and he ends up turning into a rooster. And he can't fly. And so he ends up chasing P-Man around as everybody watches. And that's how it ends. So that was Wonderland #1. And that was Akira Toriyama's very first published work. So it's kind of sad to see that it failed. It's not that bad. It's obviously not as great as his later stuff like Dr. Slump and Dragon Ball and Sandland and stuff like that. But it has some pretty good gags in there. But yeah, it got last place amongst the readers. And the sequel ended up flopping as well. And he just produced even more and more works that ended up failing. And were later published in today's Highlight Island, I guess, was like the anthology collection of all his failed works. But he just kept failing. Kept failing, but he didn't give up because he was stubborn. He was like, I don't want to go out as a failure. I want to at least have one work that does decently well. And eventually that stubbornness ended up making him I would say the most popular mangaka ever. I would put Akira Toriyama up there with Go Nagai as like two of the biggest people in manga and anime history. Easily Akira Toriyama. It's like if there was a Mount Rushmore of mangakas, Akira Toriyama's got to be #1. Go Nagai has got to be up there as well. Not sure who you would put as the third and fourth. You guys let me know. But yeah, I just think it's an interesting story. Not Wonder Island, though Wonder Island itself is kind of interesting to have a kamikaze pilot lost on this island filled with weirdos, but he's the one that everyone finds weird. But just the fact that he refused to be a failure. It's like, all right, my work sucks according to the readers. Like, they didn't like it at all, but I'm going to keep going. Okay, the sequel bombed. I'm going to keep going. He had like over a year of just flops, flop after flop after flop. But he just like, I'm going to keep going. Like, I'm not going to quit as a loser. Like, I can't, that can't be my destiny. That can't be my legacy in the mangaka business, is to go out as a flop. And he just kept going. And now he's like the greatest mangaka ever that ever was. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that's like a really good story in there itself, like a good lesson to learn. That's, if there's something that you really want, that you truly hold dear, that like you really want to accomplish, don't let your failure stop you. Keep going. Use that as motivation to just keep pushing yourself harder and harder and harder. Keep trying, keep trying. You're gonna fail. You're gonna have your fallbacks, your relapses, your whatever it is, your stumbles. But just keep going. Keep trying, keep practicing, keep working at it, and eventually things will change, as they changed for Toriyama. He went from flop after flop after flop, just a whole year of nothing but flops, and now he's like the greatest mangaka that ever was. The entire world knows his name. The entire world is paying honors to his death and to his legacy. I don't know how else to end this. Just, I think there's a good lesson there. And I guess just thank you, Toriyama, for all that you've done, for all that you've created, for all the lives that you've changed. I know that there were plenty of people out there who like were at their lows, and maybe just reading Dragon Ball, they connected with someone, like they connected with Goku, and Goku gave them strength. I see this all the time where, people are at a low point in their life and they turn to fiction to kind of just help escape their burdens for a while. And eventually they take lessons from that. And so I've seen people take lessons from things like Dragon Ball. I've seen things like Chrono Trigger changing people's lives for the better. So yeah, thank you for all you've done. You've had a huge impact on the world in a positive way. And of course, respects and condolences to his family. But yeah, I thought like this would be like a nice, hopefully I've done this right. Hopefully you guys like it. But I just wanted to do some kind of like little tribute to Akira Toriyama. And so, as I said before, since I usually like to do like spotlights on obscure stuff, or like reviews or look backs on old works, I thought, why not do a look back on Akira's very, very first published work? Why not just show that? And then also just tie in just the whole lesson of don't give up on your dreams. Like keep pushing yourself, keep striving to accomplish them, and eventually you'll get there. So yeah, there you go. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time. Take care. Later. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, I still want to thank you for watching it this far, and I hope the next one is more to your liking. With that said, thank you once again, and I hope you guys and gals have a good one. Later.